Hello, and thank you for joining me for another real-world review. Today I'm going to be looking at the Garmin RTL510 Rearview radar light. This is Garmin's second generation bicycle taillight with integrated radar technology. I spent about 4 months using it outdoors before the winter season came and put me on the trainer. Before I get started, here are some other products I'm currently looking at and will review shortly. I hope you'll subscribe for those, or perhaps comment on a piece of technology you think I should take a look at. For those in a hurry, I can summarize this entire review by saying there are a lot of things you should buy first and for less money. I like my RTL510, but the justifiable use case in my opinion is pretty narrow. I'll describe what the RTL510 does, what you should probably buy first, where the RTL510 does add value, and then a brief comparison to its first generation predecessor. Off the top, it's important to keep in mind that the RTL510 really only does two things. Radar sounds technologically impressive, but we can break it all down into two functions and compare what other options you have. First, it's just a taillight. The integrated radar can sense vehicles approaching from the rear and automatically flash the light brighter and faster. And two, which is optional, it can let you know cars are approaching from the rear, but only when paired with a compatible display device. To address the first point, if the ultimate in safety is for the RTL510 to flash bright and fast when a car approaches, wouldn't it be safest to have a fast, bright light all the time? The obvious answer is of course. This is especially true while riding in the city where the constant flow of traffic sets the Garmin on high alert, and the light is always flashing bright and fast. So despite my interest in the first generation radar light 2 years ago, logic dictated I save a bunch of cash and buy a traditional light that matched or exceeded the Garmin's brightness and flash frequency. I happened to get the Nog blinder, and I've been happy with it. But I think any reputable taillight around the $50 region will give the RTL510 a run for its money. The other argument for either of Garmin's radar lights is awareness. The RTL510 can pair with a number of Garmin devices that will let you know if cars are approaching from the back, how many there are, and their general speed. As a side note, you can get either of Garmin's radar lights bundled with a single-purpose display for an additional $100 US. I'd say it's foolish to buy the bundle. At the time of this video, the radar light is compatible with devices as low as the Garmin Edge 25. That costs about $169. But for that little bit extra, you get a full bike computer with speed, distance, heart rate, etc. Regardless of what display you choose, the sad truth is it will do very little to actually keep you safe. If an inattentive driver is behind you, the only debate radar adds is whether you want to know it's coming or not. I was a bike courier in my early 20s, and I started using a helmet-mounted mirror. That is something you get used to very quickly and feel naked riding without. Whereas a bike-mounted mirror only shows you a small portion of the world, the helmet-mounted mirror acts as eyes on the back of your head. You can turn your head, look left, right, up and down, and get a full 360 view of your surroundings. More than just safety, I use the mirror on group rides, when there are people drafting me. I can see second by second if I'm going the right speed, too fast, too slow for my friends. But back to safety. The benefit of a helmet mirror over radar is you can see whether the car is swerving, crossing the line, and if you need to get your butt off the road quickly. So for safety, for performance, this $15 gadget is infinitely more valuable than rear-facing radar. So if all that is true, why on earth did I buy a Garmin RTL510? It was a slow decision that came in stages over several weeks. The first problem I came across was realizing that the mirror went out of position when I dropped my aero bars. As I said before, seeing behind me is something I take for granted, and I felt blind. Next, if you've watched some of my other reviews, you'll know that I'm a large proponent of cycling heads-up displays. A handlebar-mounted radar warning display didn't seem at all useful to me. However, having an alert in my VariaVision HUD, which I could then follow up with using my mirror, started to make sense. And finally, I found that my trusty basic taillight was going dead somewhere around 2.5 hours. As I started to take longer rides by myself, I didn't like the prospect of dimming or slowing the flash to get longer battery life. Yes, I considered buying a second light to swap mid-ride. That would have been cheaper than buying the Garmin RTL510, but the two previous points started to make a compelling argument for the upgrade. So that is where I'll say the Garmin RTL510 is worth considering. First, you have a heads-up display that will give you an unavoidable warning, or, as a close second, a Garmin watch that will vibrate when cars approach. 2, you have a mirror that will let you follow up on the warning to see if any particular vehicle is a danger. 3, you ride outside the city where the RTL510 lighting will actually vary and won't just be flashing bright and fast due to the constant flow of cars. And 4, you're riding long enough that a less expensive light would go dead. I will now close the video with an anecdotal comparison to the first generation radar light. Another factor in my purchase is that I had a friend recently buy the first generation. It put the technology back on my radar. Anyways, it got me thinking again and doing some research. That's when I found out the RTL510 had been released. At the time of this video, all my local retailers are still selling the first generation at full price, despite the RTL510 being released months ago. From my observation, there's a big difference between the first and second generation. In theory, the first generation activates more LED lights as cars approach. From what I can tell, the first generation is never very bright, no matter how many LEDs are on. The RTL510 by comparison is blinding. Until the first generation is clearance priced to sell, there's no reason to consider it. And even then, it's worth paying a little extra for a device that directly impacts your safety on the road. I hope this video helped some of you make a decision. I hope you'll subscribe and of course stay tuned for more reviews.